Welcome to Tech Podcast, where we dive deep into the cutting-edge world of technology and artificial intelligence. Let's get started into one of the more unexpected Nobel Prize announcements of the year, at least for us.
Yeah.
We're going to be looking at why this year's Physics Prize went to scientists whose work really kind of revolutionized artificial intelligence. When I first saw this, I was picturing lasers and black holes, all the, typical physics stuff.
Right.
So this definitely piqued my curiosity.
Yeah, and for good reason. This isn't just a physics prize. It's really a testament to how these scientists completely reshaped our understanding of what computation can even be. Look at the most complex computational device we know of,
Yeah.
the human brain.
Yeah.
And so what if we could make computers learn like that?
That's incredible when you put it that way. So to understand this mind-bending connection, we're looking at the work of John J. Hopfield and Geoffrey E. Hinton. Now, these aren't just your average computer guys. Hopfield is a professor emeritus at Princeton. He's dabbled in everything from physics and biology to, you guessed it, computer science. And Hinton, a professor at the University of Toronto, is practically AI royalty. He's even earned the nickname the Godfather of AI.
He certainly wears the crown well. What's remarkable is that they dove into neural networks, really the foundation of today's AI, back when the very idea was considered almost laughable by most in the scientific community.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
So how did they even know where to begin? It's not like they could just crack open a brain and take notes.
Well, Hopfield actually started with a pretty familiar phenomenon to all of us, memory. Back in the 1980s, he was fascinated by the concept of associative memory. Those times when you can't quite recall a name, but you have that tip of the tongue feeling?
Yeah.
That's associative memory at play. Your brain making connections based on partial information.
We've all been there for sure, but how does that relate to physics?
Well, here's where it gets really interesting. Instead of writing an algorithm for associative memory, Hopfield turned to the world of atoms. He realized that the way atoms interact, with their spins influencing each other, could actually be a model for how our brains retrieve memories. It's like he looked at the fundamental building blocks of the universe and saw a reflection of our own minds.
Wow, talk about finding inspiration in unexpected places. And actually, the article we're looking at calls this work ground zero for the modern era of neural networks. So what you're saying is this seemingly simple idea of mimicking how atoms interact actually laid the groundwork for things like facial recognition software and self-driving cars.
Exactly. It's like he handed the world a blueprint for building machines that could learn and recognize patterns, just like our brains do. But he wasn't alone in this pursuit.
Right. We've got another pioneer to talk about. Enter Geoffrey Hinton, who was already fascinated by neural networks back in the 1970s, a time when, as you said, most scientists thought it was a dead end. What was his big breakthrough?
Hinton developed something called the Boltzmann machine, another model inspired by the brain. But this one borrowed from a rather unexpected source, thermodynamics. You see, the Boltzmann machine gets its name from the Boltzmann equation, which basically describes how energy is distributed in a system.
Okay. I'm going to need you to break that down for me. How do you go from the energy of a system to a computer that learns? It seems like a little bit of a leap.
Okay, so imagine a network of light switches, each representing a bit of information. These switches can be on or off, just like neurons in our brain can fire or be quiet. Now imagine these switches are connected and influence each other's states based on how much energy the overall system has. That's a simplified way to think about the Boltzmann machine.
So instead of ones and zeros, we're talking about high energy and low energy, dictating how these switches interact.
Precisely. And while the Boltzmann machine itself isn't really the powerhouse behind today's AI, it played a crucial role in reviving the field. Hinton's work demonstrated that building machines that mimic the brain's approach to computation, even in a simplified way, had real potential.
So they had these incredible breakthroughs. But it sounds like the world wasn't quite ready to embrace AI just yet. It's fascinating how these early ideas, almost like whispers in the wind, eventually became the roar of today's AI landscape. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's go back to those early days. What happened next?
Well, Hinton wasn't content with just reviving the field. He wanted to really refine those ideas. And in the early 1980s, he makes another groundbreaking contribution, backpropagation. Now, without getting too technical, imagine trying to teach a dog a new trick. You give it commands, it responds. And you adjust your approach based on whether it gets closer to that desired behavior, right?
Right, lots of treats and praise, positive reinforcement.
Exactly. Backpropagation is kind of like that. But for neural networks, it's a way of adjusting the connections between those virtual light switches we talked about, making tiny tweaks based on the network's performance. This process, while mathematically complex, is what allows AI systems to learn from data and improve over time.
So backpropagation is what allows AI to go from recognizing simple patterns to, say, understanding the nuances of human language or even writing poetry.
Precisely. It's the learning mechanism that underpins much of the AI we interact with today. But here's the thing. Even back then, long before the days of, supercomputers in our pockets, Hinton and Hopfield recognized that this technology, while incredibly promising, came with a pretty hefty dose of responsibility.
Really? What kind of concerns did they have? I mean, weren't they excited about the possibility?
No, they were excited, but they were also cautious. Hopfield, for instance, he drew a parallel between AI and splitting the atom, a discovery with immense power, for good and bad.
Yeah.
It was a stark reminder that groundbreaking technology can be a double-edged sword.
And what about Hinton? What were his thoughts?
He had his own share of worries, particularly about the potential for AI to surpass human intelligence. It's a question that has captivated and perhaps even frightened humanity for decades.
Yeah, it's like those sci-fi movies where the robots become self-aware and decide humans are no longer necessary, right?
Right.
A little unnerving to think about.
Indeed. And it raises some fundamental questions about what it even means for AI to be smarter than us. Is it simply about processing power and speed? Or are there other aspects of human intelligence, creativity, empathy, moral judgment, things that might be beyond the reach of even the most sophisticated machines?
That's a really interesting point. Even with all the advancements in AI, we haven't quite figured out how to replicate those uniquely human qualities.
Exactly. And that's why this Nobel Prize is so significant. It's not just celebrating a scientific breakthrough. It's forcing us to confront the profound ethical implications of AI. It's a reminder that as we marvel at the power of these technologies, we must also consider their potential consequences.
So this prize is almost like a call to action then. A reminder to proceed with caution and responsibility as we continue to develop and integrate AI into our lives.
Precisely. But it's also a celebration of human ingenuity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And our endless curiosity to understand the world around us, even if it means looking to the tiniest particles or the most complex organ for inspiration. And speaking of the world around us, let's bring this back to our listener for a moment. How are these physics-inspired AI systems already shaping their everyday experiences?
It's funny, you don't really think about physics when you're scrolling through social media or using a navigation app, but it's like you said, it's all connected to these fundamental ideas about how information is processed, even at the atomic level.
It really is. It's all around us. Every time you ask your smart speaker for the weather, or maybe you get a personalized music recommendation, you're interacting with an AI system that has roots in those early models, inspired by the human brain.
It's mind-blowing when you think about it. Like, we're living in a world that was once the stuff of science fiction, thanks in no small part to these Nobel Prize-winning discoveries.
And here's the really fascinating part. This is really just the beginning. If we've learned anything from Hopfield and Hinton's journey, it's that the lines between disciplines like physics, biology, and computer science, they're not really lines at all. They're more like blurry dots.
That's a really interesting thought. So are you saying that by trying to recreate the brain's computational abilities, we might actually uncover even more secrets about how the brain itself works?
Yeah, precisely. It's like these two fields, AI and neuroscience. They're on this parallel journey, each pushing the boundaries of what we thought was possible. And in doing so, they're kind of illuminating the path for the other one.
So while we're busy marveling at the latest AI-powered gadgets, there's this whole other frontier of discovery happening behind the scenes, one that could unlock even deeper mysteries about what it means to be human.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe someday AI won't just be inspired by the brain. Maybe it'll actually help us understand things like consciousness and creativity in ways we never even thought possible.
Now that's a thought to leave us pondering. Well, thanks for joining us on this incredible deep dive into the world of physics-inspired AI. It's amazing how a single prize announcement can open up a universe of possibilities. That's all for today's episode of Tech Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, give us a like, drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. Stay curious, and we'll see you in the next one.